Fans of the Horus Heresy, thank you very much for joining me for a model and build review of the Coronus Grav-Carrier by Forge World. So here we have it. I've completed building my Coronus. So I'm going to approach this review in a slightly different way to how I would normally do this, and this is because of the nature of how the whole issue that I had worked out with Forge World. So just to recap, at the end of my engaging with correspondence with Forge World, the cost of this kit was refunded. So because of that, I don't think it's fair or particularly graceful to level criticism at the model for the issues I had, because this is being given to me as a free model. So what instead I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about how I resolved the challenges that I found in this kit, and I'm also just going to talk about the general build as usual. I'm going to talk about the whole build process with this model. I will explain my approach as to resolving the challenges I had, because I did manage to resolve them all in the end. So perhaps if you're in a similar situation to what I was, you might be able to benefit from those lessons I've learned, and perhaps you could use the solutions I've got without having to invest the time in working them out in the first place. I'm also going to talk about, shall we say, a quirk of this kit, the very fascinating part of the build that was actually, it was a bit like solving a puzzle, and it was very fascinating, and I'm going to actually give you an alternative way of assembling the final model, which does come with some compromises, but there is a reason for it. So that's in another fascinating part of this model. Anyway, so that is my approach. I hope you appreciate and understand why I'm going to do it this way. Let's get straight into this. So first things, this is my favorite Legio Custodes vehicle. I think it is an absolutely fantastic looking tank. I mean, the Legio Custodes, in terms of their vehicle complements, they bring streamlining and smooth surfaces to the Imperial 40k lineup, something which, Imperial technology is hard angles and sharp lines. Custodian vehicles are sleeker, smoother and more streamlined, and I really like how the sculptor has realised this sort of look. At the same time though, it still has enough ruggedness to mark it as Imperial and make it not completely alien to its stablemates. So it does have a consistency as well, because this vehicle is I suppose essentially this is a dark age of technology grade tank. So it's still human technology, but it's just very advanced human technology. So yeah, so I think the sculptor's done a really nice job of creating something new and to meet that high-tech or super high-tech brief, shall we say, but still fitting in with Imperial technology overall. Let's have a look, pick out some of the details, because there's a lot of fine detail on this model. Firstly, we have this armoured cockpit. This vehicle is probably just piloted by a single custodian supported by a machine spirit. We've got fantastic detailing on this front-mounted sensor array, both here and all of this. The single-headed Imperial Eagle. We've got two enormous air intakes. I presume they're air intakes. They look like they would hoover up huge amounts of oxygen, or, well, atmospheric air perhaps, to feed the drive system. As we move around the vehicle, another detail there. We have another single-headed Imperial Eagle. If we look at the side of the vehicle, we've got these smooth curved nacelles running down the side, and then we have this smooth upper side is contrasted by the underside, which has got these I think these are supposed to be repulsor plates or gravitor anti-gravity plates. Got some, and the detail on these is really fantastic. In particular, these 5 relief versions, which are separate parts that plug in, they look absolutely wonderful. I love the detail that's been achieved. And these are also nice and sturdy as well. They've got a really firm attachment point. So although they look slightly delicate, I think they're actually quite strong and robust for gameplay. 2 big air vents at the back. Got lots of nice detailing across the whole of the decking, both in terms of this turret position for the Arachnus blaze cannon, but also between these two The Arachnus blaze cannon, that's very well detailed. I've not fully glued this. I've actually put a pin through, so kind of in the process of finally designing it, but I'm debating whether or not to. It's linked, so they do move up and down together, but the range of motion isn't that great, so I'm probably just going to stick it in position finally. I did it as a bit of an experiment just to see how much motion there was on that particular gun position. But this is this separate part. If you're thinking about magnetising this, be wary about drilling into here. You probably want to use a shallow magnet, or maybe even a washer, and then put a magnet in here, because you don't have much depth to drill in here. And I guess also, I suppose, as an argument to say, well, you don't really need to magnetise it from a transport viewpoint because it sits quite low on the vehicle. And also, there's no weapon option in the armour list. This is currently the only weapon you can mount there. Now, that may change, but something to consider. In terms of the engine arrays, we've got these 3 big jet exhausts at the back, which are stacked one on top of another. So creating the impression of a lot of power there, I think. And then we've got 2 steering fins or control surfaces, and these are posable, so I've put both of mine in a sort of attitude that would be nosing it down, but you could change that. And then on the fins they've also got an aileron as well for further control. We have a rear door, again the single-headed eagle design, a door control, and then we have a number of sensor arrays located around that. And then the same on the other side as well. We've got a set of exhausts, and I'll come back to talk about those a bit when I get to styles. So armaments, as I said, we've got the Arachnus blaze cannon, which is I suppose it's a dual purpose multi-laser, so it can fire in a rapid fire mode, but then also a concentrated shot mode, which gives the vehicle anti-tank capabilities. And then we have a pair of Adrastus bolt cannon, which are, I suppose, representing heavy bolt guns evolved to their maximum. Right, let's take the turret off and have a look on the underside. Now, perhaps of all the 40k vehicles that Forge World has ever done, this has got the most impressive all-round directional detail, and it's more like a Titan or a Dreadnought because it has detail from every direction, and there's no less detail on the underside. You can see that here because it does look great. So with this being a grav vehicle, if you were to mount it high up or at an angle to represent it sort of flying in, you will be able to appreciate that fine detail. And let's pick out some highlights. So you've got all this all these sort of strange bars and dots on the underside of the hull. Perhaps these are part of the anti-gravity system. You've got a pair of ammunition shell ejector ports for the bolt cannon. You've got the anti-gravity system here as well, and then you've got the inner nacelle where the jet exhausts attach. And then here you've got some more detailing on the underside of the hull, including what looks like an escape hatch, which I like. A couple of other details, but yeah. So as a model with all-round detail, this is very impressive indeed. And the sculptor has executed an impressive job on the exterior visuals of this particular tank. Just a quick look at the rear again. Then you've got this inner detail on the sort of engine nacelle where these 2 smaller jet exhausts attach as well. And the look feels consistent with other sensor arrays elsewhere on the vehicle. In terms of style of this vehicle, I'm just going to share a few thoughts I'd had, because I've seen mixed responses to the look of the Custodian vehicles, and not everyone's been positive, and some people have drawn comparison against some quite recent influences, i.e. Star Wars Episode 1, but I actually see something else in this tank which the designers pulled out, and I actually think it's more subtle than that. And when I look at this vehicle, and it took me a while to realise it, but what I think the designer has styled this on is this looks like being styled on the various vehicles and boats from the 1930s, 40s, 50s, 60s, which were used in land and water speed record attempts. And in particular, it puts me in mind of a lot of Donald and then Malcolm Campbell's record-breaking Bluebirds. And in particular, you know, there's this one makes me think of the Bluebird that first broke the 400 mile an hour mark on the land speed record. And then it also puts me in mind of the Bluebird water speed vehicle as well, particularly with this sort of the twin booms and the catamaran, and the very smooth lines of the vehicle's design in terms of this front. And then it also, if you are familiar with the Auto Union racing vehicles from Germany from the mid 1930s, there are definite design cues that I see coming from those. And another reason that made me think about record-setting speed vehicles from that age was these exhaust ejector ports. Now they're exhausts, but I notice they're in banks of 6, and this of course this really triggers a visual cue in my mind to the various V12 engines in that era as high performance power units. So yeah, so that's another little cue that makes me think that there's some influence into this model from early land speed and water speed record breaking vehicles. Yeah. But yeah, I really like the looks. The other thing this model has in terms of detail is, for me, a slightly, I don't know, perhaps this is over-engineered for what this model can do. But I'll show you it and then I'll explain my thoughts on it. So this vehicle has full interior detail, and it's accessed via this ramp at the back that lowers. I've not magnetised this at the moment. This will ultimately be stuck. I think I could put some small magnets on. We'll see. There is full set of detail that goes inside, and it does actually run up to a bulkhead mounted around. It's probably about here. Well, I say mounted around there. I didn't bother putting mine in because it's just. And let me show you what the bulkhead looks like. So yeah, so nice. It's a nice design piece. The seating arrangement is 2 sets of 3 seats, 3 on each side. And they are suitably custodian size, but I'm showing you this deliberately from the seating position because, well, let's be honest, it's a bit of a dark cave in there. And there's you've got this Imperial Thunder symbol here, and then there's another eagle design here. But there's no top hatch here to remove to allow any lighting. So unless you invest an enormous amount of time in putting an LED light into this interior, which I suppose could be done, although might be quite a tricky one given the arrangement. For me, all that detail is just lost. So it just makes me think, I mean, if you're going to do a model with full interior detail and all the design compromises and extra work that's required in building the molds and sculpting it in the first place, I think you've got to kind of like think, is that detail going to be usable? And if you look at Games Workshop plastic kits, like say the Rhino and the Land Raider, well, they all have multiple access ports that feed into that interior area. So you can have the door open, but then you can have, say, a top hatch or a side hatch open to let the light in so you can actually see it. Conversely, I mean, the other, I don't know, maybe 95 or 99% of us modelers, would it not have been better to have had a simpler hull design from a point of view of the kit assembly and also casting and ultimately cost, because we could have eliminated a part, rather than introduce this very complicated internal detailing, which is probably only going to be used by a very small number of us. I think most of us want this. So yeah, I don't know. That's my personal view on this. Maybe you disagree, and if so, or have an opposing view, and please do share that in the comments. But I do think the internal detailing on this is over-engineered and not actually necessary. Yeah, that aside, I mean, at the end of the day, the internal detailing, it doesn't take anything away from the final model, and the final model is a fantastic looking vehicle. It really is. Right, so building. So let me start. So in terms of a general build, let's think. So I guess the first thing is, when you build this, I would get the upper hull, the side hull, and the lower hull, and the door all cleaned up and ready to assemble. And then I would push fit them and align them as a single group. In the instructions it tells you to stick this on and this on and this on and then the top separately. Don't do that, because I found if you've got any warping on any of those bits, you're going to need to be able to heat them up and adjust them. And I certainly had quite a lot of warping on these two side bits. So, and you know, and that is very common on a big resin forgeable tank to create warping. As a matter of fact, it's just par for the course. You need to do that, but I'll do it that way. Get them cleaned up, push fit them, correct any warps, and then do the actual gluing. So that's the first thing to consider. I mean, this was very straightforward. Nacelles are just one big piece, so they're dead easy. They just need sticking on the side, although we'll come back to that. Turret, dowel, this detailing at the back, you know, that's all very easy to attach. Likewise, these fins. These grav plates, so there's 5 on each side, there's a pair of holes and they have a very firm push fit, which is good, and it makes them dead easy to, well, you have to push them in a bit, so it's quite a tight fit, but it's a good fit. One little tip is the key attachment point sits on one of the edges of these guys, and you're probably going to end up with a slightly rougher look there. I know I certainly did when I'd finished cleaning them up. But what you can do is I put all of the edges from the key attachment on the underside and then left the other side facing up. It's just a nice little way of, you know, improving the detail that you look at all the time. So that's that bit. So the engine clusters, so this is one of the bits I had an issue with. Now, and the issue was that the engine plate was too big and it wouldn't all go together. So let me explain how I resolved this, and it worked out really well. What I did is I got a piece of 2mm thick plastic card and I cut a piece to fit into this recess, and you can see it there. And if you get the light a bit better, you can see the underside of it there. Yeah, and that fills a hole of this space. I then take the engine plates and cut off the relief pieces on each side. So the detail pieces, sorry. Cut off the detail pieces on each side. You can see those there. I then sanded them down, so using some wet and dry emery paper. So there's probably about 0.5 millimeter of backing left. And that's just because otherwise you've got like 2mm on 2mm and they stick out. So I sanded them down, and that's probably going to take the longest, but it's just lots of circular sanding like that. Perhaps if you've got a workshop with a power tool, you can do it quicker. And then you can see there where you've got these this raised area that goes in and out. You need to cut away a bit of the tip of that, because I found that was a bit that was causing the separation. So there's about 0.5 millimeter separation on these, which meant they didn't fit and it didn't line up here. But I just cut away a bit of that, and that allowed these two to sit more closely together. So I then stuck the plate on, stuck the medium jet exhaust in place, like so. You see how that nicely lines up now. Likewise on that side, got a tiny bit of filling I might do there, but the actual the profile of the engine lines up absolutely spot on now. So stick that one on first. I didn't pin these in the end, it wasn't necessary. I used high viscosity super glue. I stuck that one on, then I stuck the two engine plates on, and obviously I had to make sure, I had to push fit them again, and make sure, and dry fit one, then put the engine in, the small jet exhaust in place, then make sure that was okay, and do, rinse repeat, stick those two on, and then finally just stick that on again, the small jet exhaust. And I just used high viscosity super glue again. I didn't pin it, it just wasn't necessary. And those are absolutely rock solid. And then finally this engine, I didn't actually need to do anything with that in the end. I think I trimmed it down a little bit, but yeah, nothing dramatic. And again, just glued on. No pinning required. So yeah, if you've encountered that issue that I did originally with this kit, that is a way of resolving it, and actually you get a really good result. Obviously, I had some really big gaps on this. I had to fill them, but I think this was just a bad one, and I don't expect that you would have to do that. So And certainly a couple of other, at least one other review example I've seen didn't have such a big gap. And I've had comments from some of you guys who watched to say that you didn't have a big gap here. So I think I was just unlucky with this one. So yeah, I don't think you'd have any issues here at all. I think you'd find that dead straightforward. Right, okay, so now we're on to attaching the nacelles, and this is where this kit gets really, really fascinating and turned into a bit of unlocking a puzzle for me. Let's have a look at the instructions. Right, so sorry, Coronus, you just shuffle back a bit. So when I got to that stage of the assembly, I was looking at it and I was looking for the 2 pages. I was looking for the stage of the instructions that showed how to attach the nacelles, and I was looking through and I got to here. So 6, put the grav plates on. Well, I'd put them on last. I actually put the nacelles on first, then attach this, and then attach those. And that's just so you're not handling a part that's got all these details on it. And there's no, so that's the way I did it. And then the next stage, it talks about assembling the bolt cannon. Okay. And there isn't actually a stage in the instructions that shows you attaching the nacelles, and it's like, oh. So I went back and I checked, left nacelle assemblies, complete for the right nacelle, and then again straight on to the bolt cannons. And we notice at this stage, at stage 7, the nacelles have appeared on the kit. There's nothing in the instructions that actually says how to locate them. However, we do get, let me get the shine off this, we do get a nice picture here to show that the detailing, this upper hull detailing, should be flush with this part of the sensor array. Yeah, you can see that clearly there. And there you go, you can see it there as well. And yeah, you can see it there as well. So I thought, okay, so that needs to line up. This part here needs to line up with this part here. Fine. I put it on and it didn't. And it was actually it was a couple of millimeters on both sides. This nacelle was moved back by a couple of millimeters. Now there's some great big chunky attachment ridges down the siding, big grooves in the side. And it was, it was like 3 millimeters. So it was like okay, that's a lot. And it made me wonder. I thought, that feels too much to be an issue with the kit. It feels like it's been designed this way. So what's the correct way to do it? Clearly the CAD instruction showed it this way. I then also decided to look at the book, so book 7, because there was a full colour art depiction of the Grav-Carrier. Okay, so we've got book 7, so I'm going to have to move you back again. There we go. I might need to take the camera up a little bit. Right. So here we go. This is the artist's rendition of Coronus. So I then checked this as reference material, and indeed we can see at the front that the nacelle upper surface aligns with the front of this. So I thought, okay, that is the way it's supposed to be. So then I started thinking about how to modify the kit to get it to fit this way. And what I did is I just, on the ridges on the hull, so let me show you what I mean. And there goes the turret again. Let me get this properly. So these pieces here, see these long attachment ridges which go into these grooves. I took about, I can't remember, it was about 2 or 3 millimeters off the rear, and I also just sanded the top down a little bit to get the alignment right. And it took me quite a long time to do it, but as you can see, I got this really nice alignment, just like that picture, and just like the CAD instructions. And I was actually really pleased with this look. It took me a long time to get it, but it just gets that streamlined look of the front of the vehicle so spot on. No gaps or anything like that. Now this is where it gets amusing. So I did that, and then I got I got the base. So you've got this isn't stuck yet, and you'll see why in a moment. So you get this little nub, this transparent resin piece, which is going to fit into here, like so. And that attaches onto this, And then all that sits on the base. So if I can get the hand Jenga bit right, so there you go. I put it on. Thought nice, and let go of it and thud. It's like, oh, thud. And instantly I realised it didn't balance. And then I just laughed because I realised what had gone on. The balance point on the kit, for some reason, wasn't quite right with this located here. So rather than having to redesign this entire part, the kit designers have just moved the nacelles back slightly, which doesn't have, you know, and just change the look of that a little bit to get the balance, and do it from the side again. So that's all like that, and thud. So yeah, that is how it is. I confirmed that this was indeed the case when I checked another example of this kit, and I'll just show you a picture of this now. You've got these little gap where the nacelles are recessed backwards. The reason for that is there's obviously a lot of weight in the front of these nacelles, and it just brings the centre of gravity back a little to restore that as a correct balance point. So yeah, it's quite funny. Quite funny that really, discovering that little quirk of the kit. That said, I think it looks perfectly good both ways, and it's, you know, quite a matter of taste. I mean, you know, both ways have got their pros and cons. You've got the continuity and the streamlining of this approach, or a slightly more open, visible front end with them being a little bit further back, and the fact that it'll balance straight on that base. Now I'm fine with that because I'm going to get some acrylic rod and do a bit of work making a little bit of a stand for this, because it's such a nice model. There's some detail. It'd be nice to show off the detail underside a bit. A funny little quirk to discover there, and I hope sharing it with you guys gives you some ideas around building this tank, if you choose to get one. So, and I think that concludes my review of the build and the model. Yeah, I think it does. I think a good example of this kit, I think you're going to find it should be a reasonably straightforward build. The trickiest bit, I think, is going to be aligning, you know, just working out any warps on putting the hull together. If you choose to do this little modification I've done, might take you a few hours work of sanding and carefully fitting to get the alignment spot on. That's extra work, as I say. This is a wonderful looking tank, and while despite of all the challenges I've had, you know, this is, you know, I've got a very kind gesture from Forge with resolving that. You know, and I'd say in terms of the assembly process, well, you know, this was to building resin models what Hákarl is to food. It was hardcore. If you don't know what Hákarl is, I'll leave a link in the description. I would, if you're interested in the Custodians, I would definitely recommend this kit. It's a lovely looking tank. It really is fantastic looking. And I think at the price point, which is £110, it feels well priced actually. I thought it was, when I first saw it, I thought it was going to be 120, but it came out at 110. So a bit better price than I was expecting as well. So yeah, I think that's a fair price point. Now all I need is some Sagittarium guard to fly around in this beastie. But and on that note, I will be reviewing the tactics for this separately because of the extended nature of this build review. So let me know what you think about the Coronus Grav-Carrier kit and build in the comment section if you've got anything to share. Thank you very much for watching. I'll speak to you next time, and goodbye.